Anna Parker sat on the worn wooden porch of the house she had unexpectedly inherited, staring out into the overgrown landscape that stretched around it. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, a scent she hadn't experienced in years. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders, unsettled by the eerie quiet of her grandfather's old estate near Sugarloaf Mountain. This place was a relic of a life she had never been a part of, and yet, now it belonged to her. She had come here looking for answers, hoping to find some trace of Warren Sheffield, the man she barely knew, yet who had left her everything he owned. As a child, she had only seen him a handful of times, a quiet and reserved figure with paint-stained hands and piercing eyes that always seemed distant. Her parents' bitter divorce had severed whatever thin connection they had, leaving her with only faded memories and a name on a will. Now, standing in the middle of his abandoned life, she felt like an imposter. The house itself had not fared well in his absence. Though the structure remained solid, time had crept in, warping the floorboards and peeling the paint from the walls. The rooms smelled of dust and forgotten things, filled with furniture covered in white sheets like ghosts frozen in place. She spent her first afternoon here, peeling back those sheets, revealing a home untouched since her grandfather's death. In the attic, among the stacks of old canvases, she found the painting. It was tucked behind a row of others, hidden in the farthest corner of the room. When she pulled it into the light, a chill ran down her spine. It was a portrait, a perfect, detailed painting of a woman who looked exactly like her. But it was impossible. This painting was old, the brushstrokes weathered, the edges of the canvas brittle with age, yet the woman staring back at her had her same dark curls, her same sharp cheekbones, the same cautious expression she saw in the mirror. She set the painting down with shaky hands, her breath coming too fast. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it was just someone who happened to look like her, but deep down, she felt something else. A connection. A warning. That night, she lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, the mattress stiff and unwelcoming. Every creak of the house made her flinch. Every gust of wind against the windows sent a shiver through her. She told herself she was being ridiculous. There was nothing here but memories and dust. But then she heard it. A sound from outside. Sitting up, she strained to listen. At first, she thought it was just the wind in the trees, but then she heard it again. Footsteps, soft but deliberate, moving through the brush near the house. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Slowly, she got up, tiptoeing toward the window. The moonlight cast long shadows across the yard, making it hard to see, but then, there, just beyond the tree line, a figure stood motionless, watching the house. Anna's breath caught in her throat. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, just remained there like a statue carved from darkness. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone, but when she looked back, the figure was gone. The next morning, she tried to convince herself it had been her imagination. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe the stress of the past few weeks was finally catching up to her. But as she stepped outside, she found something that made her stomach drop. Footprints. Fresh ones, leading from the woods to the edge of the house. Someone had been watching her. Determined to find answers, Anna spent the next few days searching the house for clues about her grandfather's past. She pored through his journals, sifted through old letters, but nothing explained why he had chosen to leave her everything, why he had painted her face decades before she was even born, why someone was lurking in the woods, watching her every move. Then she found the key. It was tucked inside an envelope hidden beneath a false bottom in his desk drawer. Alongside it was a single note written in her grandfather's familiar scrawl. The icon is safe, but not for long. You must protect it." Anna's hands trembled as she reread the words. The icon? What did that mean? She had never heard of it before. Was it a painting? A religious artifact? Whatever it was, her grandfather had hidden it. Hidden it well enough that someone was still looking for it. The next night, she was woken by the sound of something moving downstairs. Fear gripped her as she sat up, straining to hear. Then, a soft rustling, the unmistakable sound of someone inside the house. Panic surged through her veins. She reached for the only weapon she had, a heavy brass candlestick from the bedside table, before creeping toward the door. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she moved down the stairs, each step slow and careful. The living room was dark, shadows stretching across the floor. Then she saw him. A man stood by her grandfather's desk, rifling through the drawers. He was tall, lean, dressed in dark clothing that blended into the night. His back was turned to her, but she could see the tension in his posture, the urgency in his movements. "Stop," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The man froze. Slowly he turned to face her, and in the dim light she saw his face. Rugged, sharp features, eyes dark and unreadable. He looked just as shocked to see her as she was to see him. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low. "Neither should you," Anna countered, tightening her grip on the candlestick. They stared at each other for a long moment, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. Then, in a swift motion, the man stepped back and disappeared into the night before she could stop him. By the time the police arrived, there was no trace of him, no sign of forced entry, no stolen items, just the lingering sense that he had been searching for something. The icon. Anna knew she couldn't leave. Not yet. Whatever her grandfather had hidden, people were still looking for it, and she needed to find it before they did. The following days were spent tearing apart the house. She searched behind walls, beneath floorboards, in every forgotten corner. Then, finally, she found it. Behind an old bookcase, she discovered a hidden compartment. Inside was a small wooden box, its edges worn with age. She hesitated before opening it, her breath catching as she lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, was a painting. A small, exquisite religious icon, its gold leaf shimmering even in the dim light. It was beautiful, ancient, and unmistakably valuable. The truth crashed into her all at once. This was what they had been after. This was what her grandfather had hidden. And now it was in her hands. As she stared at the icon, a shadow moved outside the window. The man was back. And this time, he wasn't alone.